All my crafty baddies, welcome back and thank you for being here. Today we are going to be taking all of my scraps, not all of them, but the ones that work well together. We're going to be taking those and we are going to be making pants like this. They're not going to be exactly like this, but these kind of patchwork pants. I saw these and I just fell in love. I thought they were so beautiful, so amazing, and I really wanted some for myself. So if you want to see how I make these, come along and watch the rest of the video. And I'm sure you're going to love them as much as I do because they're so amazing. They're so cool and they're so unique. I've never seen anything like these except for this picture that I just showed you. But I can't find anything else like this. There's this one picture that exists. This is it. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing else. I can't find these pants in any other pictures. I don't know. So maybe they're handmade, and maybe that's why I have to hand make these. Anyway. Oh, also I got a mic. I hope the quality's better. Love y'all. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take all of our scraps of fabrics, cut them down to the same size. In my case, I did 3.5 inches and 4.5 inches. Sewed them all in straight lines. And then I'm putting all those lines together and kind of deciding where I like them placed best. To make these extra scrappy, I want to make sure that there are no two fabrics that are the same next to each other. So that's how I've laid these out. So my process here was to iron all of my strips and then lay them down in the order in which I wanted them to go. Then I took a little break to go into Vancouver and hang out with my friends, and we ended up going to Fluvog, and I just had to film all of these shoes, and they had a couple bags, and these are so beautiful. The way that Fluvog combines colors is so beautiful and inspiring to me. So this was a really great fun time to just go in and look at these all in person. Back to the pants. Once I had my plan of my layout, I took these all to the sewing machine, sewed the strips together, and then I went ahead and pressed this. And this takes a long time, but it's definitely worth it to get a good result. And finally, it's time to start prepping our fabric. So I'm using this beautiful McCall's vintage pattern that I love so much, and you might have seen it in previous videos, and it's already cut out. I'm laying it flat onto my fabric and going ahead and cutting all the fabric out. But once I cut my front pieces, I realized that I didn't have quite enough fabric made for the back, but that's okay. I just went back to the sewing machine and cut up a bunch of more pieces of my scraps because I had a little bit left, and went ahead and made this a bit bigger so that I had enough for the back. So here we are back to the beginning, and you know what? I could have just read my pattern instructions and looked at the yardage that I needed for this and got that correct, but I was lazy, I admit, and I had to go back to the drawing board and make more fabric, and this takes so long making all this. It's like making a quilt. It just takes forever, so I really didn't want to have to make more than I needed. And then I'm making sure Luna doesn't get burnt on the iron because she's being a silly, goofy girl. But yay, we've made it now. My pattern pieces are cut out. I'm sewing them together. I don't even know what's happening here, fool. Oh yeah, this is part of the pattern. You sew that little bit, and then you press, and then you install the zipper. So that's kind of the first step. So just go based off of whatever your pattern says for pants and use a zipper foot and use it properly, because I did it properly on one side and then I had it the wrong way on the other side, and I was like, why is this not working? And then I realized I had to switch the side of the zipper foot. So just make sure you're actually paying attention and thinking when you're doing this. I find I'm pretty good at installing zippers, so I just pull the little pull down and undo the zipper a bit, and then I try to get in and sew as close as possible to that zipper to make sure everything's looking nice and neat. And then I will baste the other side on as per my pattern's recommendations and then sew along that line. And the top of this is not looking great, but it's because I was seam ripping and then I accidentally ripped a tiny bit of the fabric at the top, as you can see there, but I ended up just covering it up with the waistband. Now with a 5/8 seam allowance, which is what my pattern asks for, I'm going ahead and seaming down the middle of the pants as well as the side seam of the pants, and then this is where we're at. So we've got a zipper on, we've got the sides done, but I noticed some of my fabric was opening a bit, and that's because I didn't serge the edges. I don't have a serger, so I'm just going ahead and using a zigzag stitch on all these finicky fabrics that are more willing to fray. Some of them were okay and they weren't susceptible to fraying, but a lot of them were, so I went ahead and did that zigzag stitch to a lot of those pieces, and that took a long time as well. But after securing all of those frayy pieces, basically the bottom of the pants are done, and all that's left to do is add the waistband. So I just cut some interfacing to match the size of the waistband, and I'm going ahead and pressing this all together because that's the type of interfacing that I have. Then I basted by hand the waistband to the pants just to make sure everything's perfectly lined up and where it's supposed to be, and then I went ahead and used my machine to sew this in securely. Now I've flipped the waistband out and it's already pressed so that it's ready to go to sew, so now I'm just top stitching down and that's going to secure the waistline down. I've made buttonholes before, but I just didn't want to make any mistakes with these pants, and I know that I'm not the best at making buttonholes. I'd like to practice that a little bit more before I go ahead and do them to like a pretty much finished piece. So I'm going to be using these little hook closures that I had some extras of. So I'm just hand sewing these in place and only going through the back piece of fabric and not through the top piece of fabric because I obviously don't want that thread showing through. And I'm just going back and forth with the thread through each hole on these little closures to make them really secure onto the pants. And now it's time for my favorite part. I got these little labels made with my logo on them, and I love adding the label in at the end. And here is how the pants turned out. This is honestly the best way I probably could have used these scrap pieces of fabric. These pants are so cool, and I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of them. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like, maybe subscribe because I do a lot more sewing, knitting, all different types of fashion videos. So I'd hope you'd stick around and come along. Thank you so much for being here. Bye!